Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Fears Unlocked. My name is Alex Almendares and I am
Frank Sejas, and we are your hosts. Not a problem. He wants to be both of us. Every episode, we dive into the world of fears and how we as humans react, what scares us, and how common or uncommon our fears are. Today's episode is our first episode, hopefully of a few of those to come. Mm-hmm. And the fear that we have going on today is the fear of flying. We chose that actually, when we were talking about topics of what to do our podcast on. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest things that happened was, like, for me is the fear of flying. For the longest time, I didn't even call it like a fear. For me, it was more being uncomfortable, things like that. Okay. But given our show and our episodes, mm-hmm.
fear
Fear of flying is definitely something that's very evident out there. Like, people do experience it. As much as people fly, obviously, right. People experience it. But it's interesting, I think, today, because when we were trying to figure out, like what to talk about, right? And our topics, mm-hmm. you mentioned that you've not flown.
Right. I have no experience flying. I've never flown.
Which, to be honest, for you, I was a little bit hesitant. Because I was like, wait a second, we're going to do our first episode on fears. One of mine, Fears Unlocked, is flying. But then I was like, how's that going to help you for future reference? Because you don't feel like us talking about anything that we're going to talk about today mm-hmm. would change your ideas on getting on a plane?
Well, I've always felt like, not that I'm immune to it. I've thought about how I would feel about it. I understand where the anxiety comes in, because like the takeoff and everything just seems like you just start speeding up, taking off. It's just, it seems very anxiety inducing, Yeah.
And like, I have friends that are pilots, and people right off the bat, when you say anything about any fear, right? Mm-hmm. People always come and defend it on the other end. And it's usually like, oh, why are you afraid of that, right? There's always a questioning of a fear.
The statistics.
When it comes to flying, there's a lot of statistics that obviously, they come in defense of like, it's one of the safest, because it is overall worldwide, because flying is something that's done throughout the world. And it's been happening for quite some time, right? Like, Wright brothers were the ones that first started, invented the first plane, all that stuff, So things get developed over the time. And, it went from being like this huge chunk of what could have been looked at as, like, obviously not metal, but something that's heavy, that's aerodynamic, but it's flying through the air. And the development of, like, what these designs have changed a lot, but it's still this huge vessel that's like up in the air, and it's flying, and when something goes wrong, it goes wrong. And I think that's what it is for me. Statistically, though, if we're going over some of this, we were able to find some information. I went on to CNN, and so we can see this. It says in its 2024 safety report, released in February 2025, IATA, which is the trade association of the world's airlines, calculated the last year saw one accident for every 880,000 flights. That's a lot of flights, mm-hmm. but that's or 7 fatal accidents out of 40.6 million flights in 2024. So, despite that, obviously, I think we're in 2025, right? And this year, every year, I think ever since pandemic, especially because, like, at our age, and just it's more evident with the years passing right now, mm-hmm. Was that COVID happened, and people have just been like, okay, the next year is going to be better. The next year is going to be better. But this year kind of opened up with flight issues. Boeing already had some stuff going on for a while, but then there were plane crashes this year. There was the Korean one that happened.
Collision with the helicopter,
which was the most evident for us here in the United States, obviously.
Yeah.
It wasn't that it was more important, but I think it was more close to home.
Yeah.
And then there was the Russian aircraft, or the one that was going over Russia and got shot down. And then that wasn't like a traditional plane crash, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
It was something that was more caused. We don't have all the full details, but then there was luckily everyone survived, but there was the plane crash that happened on landing in Canada. I don't know if you recall that one.
I've heard about this one.
Oh yeah, so that one happened in February.
Okay.
And it was literally right when I was going to be. I was planning a trip. My birthday was on February 27th, and I was like, I'm gonna go to Guatemala. I'm gonna do this huge trip, and literally as I'm looking for flight stuff, right? Like looking at the packages, all that stuff. I'm there with family. We're planning things out. We all read that story about the one with the helicopter in Washington, D.C. And then we waited a little bit, right? Like a few weeks. And then all of a sudden comes again, I'm on a trip actually, and I'm trying to plan another trip. Here I am on a trip, planning a trip. But, and then that whole article, comes up. Like, unfortunately, nowadays, what is it? Technology gives you a lot of updates. They give you a lot of things, news, right up to date. But then you get all these notifications for stuff. Like it's like my phone knows that I don't like flying. Right. And it was like notifying me, hey, this huge plane crash happened today. And it was in Canada. On landing, what was it? The plane, I guess it was too icy. It was weather conditions, something that's out of the pilot's hands, stuff like that. But when they landed, it caused for there to be an issue with the landing gear, and then the plane completely flips. And there's videos of this, because nowadays what happens is that you kind of, there's people always seemingly on their phone. Like a lot of the times people are like, how do they even get this footage, right? Like for not even just plane crashes, but anything that's going on. Nowadays, everyone is a reporter. Everyone has the availability of, having something to record. And there is recording of that. And you see like the plane completely flip and then slide down the runway. Luckily, from my knowledge, no one died. Nothing has come from that. People obviously got severely injured.
I would imagine.
Things like that. But yeah, there's video from inside of the plane. People completely flipped upside down, like still on their seats.
Wow.
And then they're being helped out, being like pulled out of the plane. And there was a very famous, he's a videographer and photographer, and also happens to be a snowboarder. And he was on that flight. And so he's like, dude, he puts his life at risk every single day, right? Doing these things where it was planned, but then all of a sudden there's this flight risk. Yeah. We all, I think at the end of the day, when you get on a plane, and that's for you, whenever you do it, is there's already like that, undisclosed like disclaimer that, you board a plane knowing that there's always a possibility that something can go wrong. But for the most part, you arrive to your destination and then you have a great trip and then you come back home. Yeah. But with that, coming back to like the fear, I think my fear stems from the fact that when I was a kid, I watched La Bamba.
Oh, have you ever seen La Bamba? Yeah. The Richie Valens.
And and in that, his fear stems from being young, and I guess they're like out at their house or something like that, and there's a nearby plane crash, and they like run to it. Yeah. And they see like people burning alive and like limbs and all this stuff, and it's something that lives with him, right? Like, and it's an actual fear. Like he saw something and it became something that was bad. But when you're a kid, you're very much influenced by like what you watch, and I think for me it always stuck in my head where I was like, oh, like he has this fear. It's not mine, but like here I am with it, at the same time. So it always stuck with me. And you were discussing movies.
Yeah, so I found it interesting because it felt like ever since the early 90s onward, there's been this upward trend of like plane disaster movies. Like one of the ones that pops into my head first is like the Final Destination stuff, where it's like that plane gets ripped open and everything, and that's coming off. That's what, like a year before, like unfortunately, like the September 11th attacks and all that. So
you never even thought about that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's to a point to where, I mean, IMDb has a list where it's like the top 100 like plane incident movies.
Do you
it's
recall
like a little subgenre? Again, there's like stuff like the United 93 movies, all that. Let's see.
Yeah, those ones were. I mean, it's not even. I think Final Destination he has that premonition and the plane explodes for some reason or other. I don't know if they go into why it explodes, but obviously something mechanical was wrong on their flight. They're going to France. The United 93 is September.
Yeah, the September 11th.
September 11th things. But still, I mean, I guess like that's the other thing. It's not even being fearful that something mechanical will go wrong on a plane. It's that terrorism is a thing that obviously was a lot of in the past. And, you know, things can happen when someone creates a problem on like aboard a flight. And, you know, you've not been on a plane before, but I guess, you know, the whole flight process goes from you checking in, doing all your checked baggage. You go through screening. Now there's a lot of, you know, security protocols. You even go through like, I think they body scan you.
Yeah,
can see everything.
From an outside perspective, I could see how that doesn't help the anxiety because that's just more stress-inducing stuff before you get onto the plane. And then even there, you can tell like just the amount of videos and incidents and stuff, like not even about, let's say, like plane crashes or anything like that, just of people like maybe acting out on a plane or something like that gets recorded. It's just, it kind of shows how like anxious everyone is, that like whenever something pops off, everyone's like just quick to like jolt up, record, do something that, you know.
Yeah. Anxiety. I mean, you're bringing up anxiety, and if we, like, you know, when we were doing prep for this episode, there's that, you know, at the top of the list. It's like, so the name for fear of flying, you know, at this point, if we want to identify that, it's called aerophobia,
right,
which is the fear of flying. It says it can manifest as both physical and psychological symptoms, including panic attacks, sweating, trembling, nausea, rapid heartbeat, shortness of breath, and avoidance of flying. You know, and then when you go to, none of that sounds fun. It's kind of like commercials when they're telling you like, oh, take like Prozac or whatever medication, but it may cause nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, you know, combustion, all these things. And it always sounds weird.
Always something.
But in this, we have, you know, anxiety and panic attacks. That's something where it's very physical, because it's not even, a lot of people will tell you fears are mental, right? Like they're in your head.
Very mental blocks, yeah.
But what happens when that manifests as a physical attack? Like, you know, what are you going to do? My biggest thing when I go on a plane, and it's weird because I've flown throughout the world. I haven't done Asia yet, but I used to fly for college. I went to school on the East Coast before, you know, right now I'm back in school, but I went to school on the East Coast in New Hampshire, and I would fly. You know, cheapest flights are also when you do stops, right? Like you don't have a direct flight, but you do stops along the way, and whatever
layovers
happen, like layovers. Sometimes they don't make any sense to me because you go, it's like you backtrack.
Yeah.
Like, and then you make your trip so much longer, but you find really cheap flights like that sometimes. And, you know, so I used to fly at least probably get on 20 different flights a year. Wow. That was a minimum. And then I studied abroad. I went to Europe. I did all this stuff, and I've always traveled with my family. I just always, since I was a kid, La Bamba sets in, you know, that movie. And ever since then, I can recall having this kind of like idea of things that could go wrong, and feeling a little bit anxious and just concerned that when you're on a flight, you have turbulence. And turbulence means, you know, just the natural kind of like vibrations, and that can go from there's normal to like severe, where you can see stuff coming out of the cabins. And it's because I think of obviously gravity and stuff like that, but it has to do with weather conditions and wherever there's like hot pockets or stuff like that, they call them, where the climate kind of changes. It has to do from like heat to cold, things like that, or, you know, cold fronts, all that stuff can affect where you all of a sudden feel like things will shake because they're hitting that, not imaginary, but it's real, but like some kind of wind front.
Right.
And then you have drops sometimes. Those are the not fun. I love roller coasters.
Yeah.
But not that.
Okay.
Do you do?
I love roller coasters too. Okay. What I found interesting more so is because I forget like the exact figure, but I heard a statistic about like for one in every like maybe like 800 flights or something for one like commercial plane, it'll get struck by lightning like at least once or something like that. And despite like all the we have statistics on all this, everything can kind of be explained as to like, oh, this is why such and such happens. It really doesn't help alleviate the fear for people. Like it's like it kind of goes beyond reason for them. It's more like of a feeling that you can't kind of shake, May
I ask why you haven't been on a flight yet?
So I'm half Guatemalteco, half Nicaraguan.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I
interviewed you and I didn't know that. Oh, yeah. I was like, I'm Guatemalan too.
Oh, really?
That's why I was planning a trip to Guatemala.
You're full?
Yeah. On my dad's side. So I'm Mexican and Guatemalan.
Okay. I'm on my dad's side. I'm Nicaraguan.
So we're both half Chapin.
Yeah.
Cool.
So never to Guatemala, like, because on my mom's side of the family, they don't really visit like that, but my dad's side, my grandpa would always go. But I guess it was just like again, my mom also has a fear of flying and everything, so I guess it was one of those things where she would just like never let me go. It's not like I pushed for it, but it's just one of those things that just never happened.
And you're how old now?
21.
I guess also age has a lot to do it. I mean, I think parents, a lot of the things that you do when you're younger are influenced by your parents, right? So whether or not they're, sometimes most of the time positive stuff like trips, things like that. I mean, if you guys drove places and your parents were into camping, stuff like that, and everything was local, that could be a thing, right? Like there was never a need to fly anywhere. Financially, obviously to go on a trip, you have to have money. Right, yeah. And I don't know how many siblings you have, but like obviously depending on like your financial situation within your family, like sometimes flying a whole family somewhere is not easy.
Yeah.
Nowadays you find super cheap flights, but yeah, I mean, there's always something or other that happens. But I mean, you're now in college, you're 21, and I'm sure that at some point, I don't know, spring break. Yeah. You might want to go somewhere.
I do want to go visit Nicaragua and Guatemala, so maybe that's coming soon.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it, and yeah, hopefully, like you said. I mean, you said earlier today, like you used the word immune, meaning like on your end, you're probably not affected as much as you're getting information. Or like I said, I was worried that I was gonna maybe make you think about things as even right now that we'll discuss more about like literally like how fear can set in. Mm-hmm. But as long as that doesn't affect you, because, a lot of people they don't think about those things. I think about people that have fears of rodents, snakes, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I'm unbothered by it. So I understand how other people can be unbothered by my fear.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't affect them. And so that's the thing that I think is one of the worst things though is, I will board a plane and I'll go, and I'm really well aware that other people they're like, whatever, right? Yeah. They're nonchalant. They have no worries. People sit down and like literally right into it because sometimes it takes time for them to board the plane.
Yeah.
And people that can fall asleep like that in any situation, they do on a plane. And I'm jealous of that.
Yeah.
I've been jealous my whole life. And the longest flight that I've done continuous, it was a 13-hour flight to Germany. And it was different. I was with friends, and so like that was kind of interesting. But there was times when they all fell asleep, and then now I'm in my thoughts about like, there's turbulence.
Oh, so you stayed awake the whole flight?
I did not fall asleep at all during that flight. And it's like I said, it was different back then when I was younger. I think like I did it, I was aware, but as long as I was distracted, everything was cool. But as I got older, it just developed into more of a, hey, I'm going through more turbulence. I'm going through more bad weather. When I went to school in New Hampshire, like when you're going to the East Coast, there's a lot of weather that affects flights.
Right. Yeah.
You know, everything, takeoff to landing to just the whole flight process. Texas is one of probably, in my mind, one of the worst, what do you call it? Like states to fly over. For some reason, they always have some kind of crazy weather.
Okay.
And when there's storms, they really affect, for some reason, over Texas. And actually, when we were looking for information, Texas happens to be one of the states that most people have issues with when they're on their flights. Like those huge drops. So again, they're not plane crashes, but there's still things where people are affected or they're getting hurt or diverted, things like that. People have had to do emergency landings because that happens too. When we were talking about movies, have you personally seen another movie that had anything to do with flying, like where you could see someone being like, oh, forget it, I'm not going to get on a plane? You know what?
None come to mind right now. I mean, I haven't watched it, but I know about the Denzel movie, the Flight, where he's like a drunken pilot and everything.
Yeah.
And actually, the Sully movie too, is flying the plane upside down, landing in what's the river called again?
That's right, with Sully. It was Tom Hanks. It was in the Hudson River.
The Hudson River. There you go.
Yeah.
It's just again, like where stuff goes right, and everyone comes out safe in those, but still, it's like another representation of just like stuff going wrong on planes, like going awry, near disasters.
How have you, I guess, like I'll get anxious and I won't tell, like obviously we're discussing it now, and actually I what do you call it, like during COVID I picked up having like a therapist, right? My doctor's office was doing a lot of stuff about like, hey, how's your mental health? Like they were giving everyone surveys because COVID was going on. A lot of people were losing jobs, doing all that stuff. And they offered like, hey, do you guys want therapy? Our patients are through like some government funding, you guys can all get free therapy. Therapy is usually quite expensive. So then I was like, yeah, why not? Recently, so I've had this therapist, I talk, and it's all over the phone, which just kind of makes it really easy for me. But, you discuss things like that bug you, your day to day. It's made me feel how like maybe more normal or like less problems than what I would assume I have as a person. Because in movies and stuff like that, you see people go to therapy and they have all these huge issues. But sometimes it's just good to have someone to talk to. But recently I was having anxiety about planning a trip, right? Like the Guatemala thing. And I brought it up to who better than the therapist, and they were discussing and like going into, well, let's break it down. Like why? We talked about like movies and experiences, Final Destination, like you said, La Bamba. Then you've got Society of Snow, which is another movie that came out on Netflix recently. I remember watching that when I was a kid. It was called Alive. And it's about like this group of, I think they're Chilean soccer team. And this was like in the 70s. And they fly over the Andes Mountains. And they crash. And they have to... Those that survive have to survive for about a month, and they eat like literally other people that have now frozen or like died. Because what do you do when you have to survive is like you do whatever you can. Like, people have been on deserted islands before because they've had issues with flights, and those were the other things that I told them. I was like, I think my anxiousness or my uncomfortableness with flying is that, yes, I want to travel. Yes, I'm going to get to my destination, but it's a flight there and it's a flight back. You're going somewhere, you have to come back. So, it's double that. While I'm on a trip, the whole time that I'm there, we'll be considering like, hey, how long am I here for? Let's say 10 days. So I've arrived. I'm happy. Maybe about 2 days before I have to get back home, I start considering like, crap, like I have to fly, like I have to get back on. Oh, I don't want to be hungover, like all these different concepts and like the weather, and you're on a trip and then you start looking and like you're like, oh crap, there's a storm. And so many flights that I've been on, especially when I was in school, I had really, really bad turbulence. And there's one specific trip where I was flying from Miami to Los Angeles. I had just gone to Puerto Rico. Had a layover, flying from Miami to LA and over Texas. There was this huge storm. And for 3 hours, we were literally told that we had to stay seated, buckled in, and things were falling from the overhead bins. Some lady fainted. Like, the plane was not only like dropping, it was doing side to side to turbulence. And I was on that flight with my sister and my dad.
Right.
And they were like, also like, just everyone was on edge. You could see people like holding onto their seats.
Yeah.
And when we landed, everyone was super happy, like applause, applause, applause. But you really don't know if you're going to land.
Yeah.
Are things going to be safe?
How long did that 3 hours feel?
Eternal. I'm religious. So I remember internally praying, feeling like, okay, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. Like, you do think about everything like that. But during those moments, like, as much as I'm an adventurous seeker, I do whitewater rafting. I do, I've done cliff diving or jumping, because I don't dive in, but like I'll jump off a cliff into like the ocean. I've done that into rivers. I love roller coasters. Like, I literally have 3 theme park passes. Stuff like that. I love adrenaline stuff. Yeah. But I'm planning it and it's different. This is out of my hands. And so I think that's where the anxiety happens.
Yeah, there's one thing I had kind of thought about is kind of like the loss of control for everyone. Like, you're kind of sitting there helpless for the most part. It's in someone else's hands. I mean, I've never been on a flight, but I've heard the pilot comes on over the intercom or whatever. I don't know if they'll come out, but it's kind of like it's a complete stranger to you.
Yeah. Yeah, you're putting your trust in. I mean, and it's nothing different than being like on a bus, things like that, right? But the movie that you said with Denzel Washington, like, everyone has their own personal life, and how many times don't you hear that like a bus driver or someone like that was drunk or someone else caused something, and again, that's the thing. There's no control to that. You're putting your hands in your life in someone else's hands, and you're hoping for the best. Mm-hmm. And for a lot of people, this happens daily. They have to commute. A lot of people have to go places for work, things like that. And so it's great that flights or flying is a mode of transportation that's actually the safest, overall. Mm-hmm. And that's great. For me, it's just, again, like that small percentage. And I think that's, at the end of the day, what I've told people is it's that there is a possibility something can happen. We know that. And there have been plenty of people that have perished, have died in crashes without knowing. Like the flight from Washington, D.C., they were coming, I think, from Chicago. Mm-hmm. I want to say, I think that's where they had been competing or doing, this plane was full of like teenagers, children, even people that were super happy, had so much to live for, right? Like these were professionals now already, like working so hard for what they were doing. And inadvertently, here they are on a plane that has an issue where they crash into another, vessel. No one ever saw that coming, right? Like they were literally about to arrive. I wonder how many people on that flight were super happy that they're like, hey, they're already descending. Yeah. So that you feel like you made it. You're there. Yeah. You're thinking about like your family that was there waiting for you, that's going to receive you, like all this stuff. And I think that was one that like really hit a lot of people, was that they are like, damn, why did that happen to these people? Like that they had so much going for them, like so much talent. And so those are the things where I'm like, I tell, my friends, or I told my therapist, like, in the long run, I don't want to be one of those statistics. Like, I don't want to be part of like that 1%, or I think it's 4%, right? Yeah. Overall, I don't want to be part of that, because whoever is part of that is obviously at the end of the day, like a horrible, horrible situation. Yeah.
And I don't want to like spook you or anything, but I've assumed you've thought about like that increase because you've taken so many flights.
Correct. Yeah.
That you feel sort of, you kind of increase your likelihood.
And you got that right. Like the more that you do something, the more that there's a chance. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to like die if I never get on a flight again. Right? Mm-hmm. Like I'm very well aware of, if we take it back to Final Destination, like things happen, freak accidents. You hear about people, stuff falling on them, like things like that happen. And, you know, you're hoping that it's never you, or you never assume it's going to be you, but things happen. Death is inevitable.
Yeah.
It's just that sometimes, you know, we try to help it. And so I guess that's the fear that we discussed today, you know, which is a fear of flying. And, you know, we're on our podcast today, the first episode. Title is Fears Unlocked. And I think that next week we're going to go, we don't know what it is yet, but we're going to go with something that you fear. And maybe I don't, so that like, you know, we can see what that's like. And maybe as we go on with these episodes, we also want to see if maybe we'll bring in some guests. But again, our podcast is Fears Unlocked. My name is Frank Sejas.
I'm Alex Almendares.
And hopefully we bring you a different episode with a different fear week to week. Thanks again.